This is Terraria's stage of progression that I think has a huge flaw. Now, you might think, oh, you're going to talk about pre-hard mode again, because yes, I made a video on why I hate pre-hard mode, and surprisingly, no, it's not that. This is actually a very small window of progression that honestly is kind of depressing that it's like this, and that is post-Golem. Now, post-Golem is arguably the most fun experience of the game, because that's when you start unlocking all these new weapons, and all these new fun weapons as well, overpowered armor, and just overall a way to become powerful. And yet, it somehow is also the one that has the biggest flaw of them all. You see, post-Golem to before Pillars is the stage of progression that is very confusing. In fact, most people don't even really experience this stage of progression because if you just play the game normally, you're more likely to just take on the Pillars. And you might think, wait, so what is in between there? There's 3 bosses, and most people don't fight them. Yeah, Duke Fishron, Empress of Light, and Betsy are supposed to be fought post-Golem, pre-Lunatic Cultists, and yet there's no reason to fight them. Now, this might not sound like a major issue to you, and it inherently isn't necessarily, but the major issue here is that there's 3 fun bosses that drop fun weapons, and yet there's no reason to fight them. And yeah, that is in the word optional, obviously, but why are they not required? Well, the first problem is that all the weapons, while they're fun, inherently are useless once you get post-pillar weapons, because the pillar weapons are really good. Now, does that mean they suck? No. The weapons from these bosses are good and hold up against Moonlord, but is it really that useful? And the other thing about this is that there's so many different weapons at this point in the game. I mean, you have event weapons, you have just so much things to do. I mean, most people go from Plantera to Golem, meaning they have access to the 2 new events, they have access to the dungeon, the new dungeon enemies, and as well as that, they also now have 3 optional bosses. Why would you ever fight these bosses? I mean, there's too much stuff to get. And also, having 3 bosses at the same stage of progression, they're all optional, means you're more likely than not going to fight the one that gives the best weapons, or the one that's the easiest. And that is Duke Fishron. Now, not everyone's going to agree with this, but most people will agree Duke Fishron out of the 3 is most likely the easiest for most people. And not only that, but also is the one that drops the best weapons. That is excluding Summoner. Summoner, you fight Empress Light. But it means that there's then, even if you go out of your way to fight one of the 3 bosses, you're going to have everything you need, and the other 2 are just useless. And let's be honest, have you ever played a playthrough of the game and fought all 3 of them at that stage of progression? The answer is probably no. And the reason why is because there's no motive to do. I know on my first playthrough, I just went straight to the cultist and then got pillar weapons and then moved on from there. And I didn't even know about Duke Fishron or any of the other ones. And that's an issue. You can't have content sitting there to not be used. And arguably, the best part about this is that the weapons they drop are all unique and fun and do good damage. It's just such a waste. It's like there's all this content for no reason. And while we're talking about it, Betsy. Betsy's probably the one that gets the least amount of players fighting her, and the reason why is because of how the Old One's army is set up. It's set up in an obscure way where you basically, to succeed, you need to grind it to get defender medals in order to buy the best gear. And the thing is, yes, once you get the best gear, it's actually not that bad. But the problem is who wants to sit there and grind this event that is pretty much useless? I mean, there's literally better things to be doing, and grind just to get specific event only weapons, just to make the event easier, and then do it over and over until you finally have the best gear, and then take it on, and then get good weapons, don't get me wrong, from Betsy, but weapons that don't even hold up compared to Duke Fishron. I mean, it's like, why? It's one of those events that I just feel like needs a lot more love or something, because it's just very pointless to fight. I mean, out of everything in the game, it's probably the one thing I probably have done the least. Like, literally, I've never touched it because it's just so annoying to do, and also takes a lot of time. Not only that, but I also think Betsy is just, it's not a hard fight, but on top of all these stupid enemies that keep on piling up while you're fighting Betsy, it makes it really difficult to actually win the fight, especially in post-Golem, because it's a lot of enemies to take on, a lot to take on at once, and you need a really good damaging weapon. So overall, the main problem is that there's 3 optional bosses in a stage of progression where you really don't even need to fight them, and also having multiple bosses means that you're usually going to choose 1 or 2, especially if they're optional. And so overall, it's just sad to see this much content being wasted. And yeah, that's basically it for this video. If you agree, leave a comment down below, and with that, I am gone.